I'm Chad Reynolds, and this is a Blueprint Engines tech video, and today we're going to talk about removing and reinstalling a distributor in your crate engine. In this case, we're working on a 350 crate engine, small block Chevrolet, that's got a HEI distributor in it. It's a pretty common distributor that you're going to find on a lot of Blueprint crate engines, and it's very simple. This is a distributor you're going to find in a lot of Blueprint crate engines, and it's a very simple installation. In order to do that, you're going to need a couple of tools. The first one is going to be a Sharpie. The second one is going to be a flat-bladed screwdriver in order to remove the connector. And then we're also going to need to remove the number one spark plug and be able to turn the engine over with a 5/8 socket and a ratchet in order to find top dead center before we do anything else. So I'm going to show you a really simple way to find top dead center without pulling any of the valve covers or looking at any of the valve train. So the way that you're going to do that, first thing is remove the number one spark plug. So you're going to pull out spark plug number one. You're going to set it aside on my favorite tool holder, aka the intake manifold. Then you're going to take a ratchet and a socket so that you can turn the crank bolt, and you're going to stick your finger in the spark plug hole. I know this sounds funny, but you're going to stick your finger in the spark plug hole. It won't go far enough in there for it to be hit by anything, and you're going to slowly turn this engine over by hand. So this engine has all the other spark plugs in it, which means that it's going to be a little bit hard to turn over, but it'll get there. When it gets around to top dead center for number one, it's going to try and shove your finger out of the hole because the compression is going to happen. Now, this thing isn't hooked up to electrical. It's not going to start. It's not going to do any of that stuff. It's not going to scare you. And now you can hear the pressure starting to come out. So listen, you can hear the air coming out. So that means that it's coming up on compression. So we're going to turn this thing until we get to 0. Now we are at top dead center on number one, and we are good to go. So at this point, we can put our spark plug back in because the engine is where we need it to be, and we're not going to turn it over anymore during this entire process. So I've got the spark plug back in. I'm going to hook the spark plug wire back up on it. And now it's time to mark the distributor. We're going to make a couple of different marks on this thing, but the first one is to mark which one of the towers here on the distributor cap is for the number one spark plug wire. Again, all Blueprint engine spark plug wires come numbered. There is a number on them, so we know this is number one. So we're going to make a mark right here on the cap so that we know that that's number one. The second mark that we're going to make is going to need the cap to be removed. So we're going to unhook the wiring connections here on the side of this HEI distributor. And then we're going to pull all of our spark plug wires off of this bad boy. And these HEI distributors have 4 spring-loaded hold-down hooks. So we're going to pull all 4 of those. And the cap will come right off. Now we need to make one more mark. So now your rotor, which is the part that spins around inside the distributor, that rotor is now aimed at number one, quote unquote, with 32 degrees of advance, which is the initial timing setting that they put in the engine at Blueprint. What you're going to do is you're going to come down on the top of the rail where the distributor cap bolts on, and we're going to make a little mark that lines up with this edge of the rotor. And these are going to be for reference later. Bake mark on these distributors to the intake manifold so that they know that they've stayed lined up. But that could be hard to see inside the car if this thing's in the, you know. So the only other thing you're going to need to do now before you can remove the distributor is to get a wrench so that you can remove the distributor hold down. So in this case, that takes a 9/16. You're just going to loosen this bolt, and that's going to allow the clamp to slide out of the way so that you can get the distributor out. Now at this point, before you pull the distributor, you need to verify that you have put a mark where the #1 spark plug wire goes, that you have put a mark where the rotor is aimed when the engine is at top dead center, and that you have put a mark on the base of the distributor. So those three things are going to ensure that the timing, if you line all of that up, will be right back to where it's supposed to be and be ready to fire it up after you put the engine in the car. So now that we've got the clamp undone, we've made all our marks, we've got nothing else connected, we can simply lift the distributor out of the engine and put it on the shelf. So now that you've got the distributor out, you can go about putting the engine in the car. So once you've got the engine in the car, then you'll be ready to install this again. The only thing that I would recommend that you do is to put wipe the flange off where the distributor mounted, put a little bit of tape on that so that nothing falls in that hole while you're installing the engine, because that would suck real bad. So definitely put a cap over the hole or put some tape over it. That way you don't have anything that's going to fall inside. But now let's assume you've put the engine back in, everything's great, you bolted on your headers, all the stuff is. So let's assume you've bolted the engine in, everything's ready to go. The next step is going to be to put the distributor right back in. So here's the thing. The only thing that you care about right this second as you put this thing in is that it drops all the way down. You do not care where the distributor is pointed exactly as far as the base goes in order to ensure timing. What you care about is that the rotor is aimed the right direction and that the distributor drops all the way down. So you're going to bounce the distributor a little bit, and that'll let it get in there. You got to remember that inside this engine, and I'll show you this on the bottom of the distributor, inside the engine, you've got the oil pump drive, and that oil pump drive has a slot in it that little mark or that little blade has to fit into. So that has to fit into the oil pump drive inside the engine. If you don't touch anything, if you don't turn this engine over at all while you're installing it, then all of this stuff will line up, okay? It's very simple and it will go in quickly. So you saw I just installed it, pulled it right back out, and I'm putting it right back in again. So all you have to do is aim the rotor roughly in the right direction, but the rotor is going to turn as the engine or as the distributor drops down in there. And that's because the gears that are on the back of the camshaft and on the bottom of the distributor are helical gears. They're not straight cut. So there's some twist in them. So as you install this, it's going to drop down and it should get your rotor aimed in the right place. If the rotor doesn't end up aimed in the right place, you need to lift it up, turn the rotor a little bit. So as you drop it in, it's going to turn. Now this is roughly the direction that we want this thing to aim, right? So we want this thing to turn with the distributor. I'm gonna bounce it a little bit, which again will help it get lined up with the oil pump drive. You gotta wiggle it a little. Worst case scenario, you may have to use a screwdriver to aim the oil pump drive, but we're going to bounce it a little bit and see if we can get this thing in there. Okay, so it went all the way down right there, but we're off a tooth on the gear. And this is an important thing to see. So if you look at the distributor at the rotor here, you can see that the rotor is not lined up with our mark down here, right? This is not uncommon. This means it's one tooth off in the helical gear. So what we need to do is we need to lift this back up far enough to turn the rotor, okay? And we need to feel it, and we're gonna turn it back one gear tooth, and there it is now. But we're missing on the oil pump drive. So we're gonna give it a little wiggle and a jiggle and bounce it. And this thing should, once the engine's in the car and you're ready to install the distributor, you're gonna use the marks that you've already made to make sure it's in the right spot. Now there's one of two scenarios that's gonna happen here. So you're going to aim the rotor just a little bit counterclockwise to where it ultimately needs to end up, and you're gonna drop the distributor right on in. Now, in this case, it did. It dropped all the way down perfectly in place. But the other scenario that can happen is you get it down there and it's about a 1/4 inch short and it just doesn't go all the way in. In that scenario, what's happening is that the oil pump drive is turned just a little bit and it won't register in the bottom of the distributor. But don't worry about that. That's super easy to fix, and I'll show you how here in just a second. What you're looking at is the top of the oil pump drive shaft, and that drive shaft has a slot in it, and you're going to use a large flathead screwdriver to turn it slightly left or right in order to get it to line up. If this takes a couple of tries, don't worry about it. It's not that difficult. You can see how the distributor is not all the way down here. That's because the oil pump drive shaft is not meshing with the bottom of the distributor correctly. You can try and wiggle it a little bit and bounce it. In that case, wiggling it and bouncing it worked, but if it didn't, that's when you're going to use the screwdriver and go down and just turn the oil pump drive shaft a tiny bit. Now that the distributor is actually dropped in, we're going to finish the installation. So that's going to involve us making sure that the mark on the base of the distributor and the intake manifold is lined up, tightening down the clamp bolt, and then putting on the cap and the plug wires. And at that point, we're ready to do the electrical connections and snap those back on and then fire up the engine. One little thing to note, when you put the cap on, you're going to wiggle the thing. There's a notch and a slot that fit together that are hidden under the bottom of the cap. If this thing will move more than this little wiggle, then you've got it in the wrong orientation. But we're good to go right here. And all you got to do is turn the spring-loaded hold downs and the cap is good to go. And because we marked number 1 and we know our rotor is aimed correctly now, we can go about taking our numbered spark plug wires and putting them on in the right order. For the firing order on this small block Chevrolet, it's 18436572. Now we connect the coil and the cap to the base and plug in the power wire, and at that point we're ready to fire it up. Now that we've shown you how to remove and install your distributor if you need to in order to install your engine, it's time to make sure that you've done everything correctly and the timing is right. Now, if you do not have a timing light, which is one of the only 2 tools that you need for this, don't stress. If you marked everything the way that we said, it's gonna be right, okay? But if you wanna verify or if you wanna make adjustments to the timing, you're gonna need 2 tools. In our case, it's a 9/16 end wrench. Yours could be different depending on what bolt you have that is clamping the distributor down. And then you're gonna need a timing light. Now your timing light Doesn't need to be a dial back like this. It could be any timing light will work that is set for a V8 engine. You're gonna need to hook an alligator clip to battery positive. In this case on the dyno, we have a switched power source, and then a ground, which in this case is on a bolt at the back of the engine. For you, it could be on the front, it could be on your alternator bracket or anything else. So that's it. You're gonna need your timing light, you're gonna need your end wrench, and once you have those two, you're ready to go. Now what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna fire up the engine, you're gonna make sure that you are getting a signal, and the way that you're gonna get a signal is with this. So this is the inductive lead. This is what reads the spark in order to flash the timing light on the balancer so you can see what the timing is. It's important. This has an arrow on it that points toward the plug, meaning the spark plug. And so you're gonna hang it on the #1 spark plug wire, and it's going to read, and that's what's gonna cause the light to flash so that you can read the timing and do that strobe effect. So after you get that connected, you're gonna fire up the engine, and that way you can verify. I've already loosened the clamp just a tiny bit. I'll verify that so that I know I can move the distributor as needed so that we can show you what it does and be good to go. So now it's time to start this thing up and start checking the timing. All right. So on this dial back timing light, we've got voltage and we have RPM. This thing's idling at about 650 for our little Blueprint 350 crate engine. And you can see that the strobe is working, which means that our probe is correct. And we're gonna check the timing here. And as we rev up the engine, the timing will change. At idle, we've got about 4 degrees of advance, and as we rev this thing up, at 2400, we're gonna have 20 degrees, which matches with our timing curve. Now, if we wanted to adjust this timing, we would turn the distributor by hand back here, and it will absolutely move the timing. And as I turn it counterclockwise, I'm getting more advance on the timing. So there we are at 10 degrees. And if I turn it the other way, I can retard the timing and get this thing down to 0 degrees. And you'll notice the idle changes a little bit. With less advance, the idle gets rougher, and the headers will start to get hotter. But this is a really mild small block, so it doesn't really get that finicky with it. But again, as I add timing to this thing and get it up to, we're at about 8 degrees right there. And now we know that we have verified that our timing is right where it needs to be because we did our marks correct. And that means that our removal and replacement was done right. And again, with simple tools, an easy, cheap timing light and 1 wrench, you can be ready to adjust your timing to your spec for your particular distributed engine combo. And whether it's a Ford or a Chevrolet, the process is going to be the same. The distributor location will just be slightly different. But again, timing light and a wrench, and you can adjust the timing yourself. Once you've verified the timing, which again was spot on with our marks, once you've verified the timing, then you can shut the engine off and lock down the clamp. So I'm going to tighten that back up, and once it's tight, and you no longer can move the distributor by hand, you're good to go. And like I said, unplug your timing light, get your stuff off of it, and it's time to go for a run.